This is a story right here that I thought I spoke about in a separate video, but when I typed my name into YouTube and put Paul Haggis' name, and this is the guy whose name I'm talking about, next to it, nothing came up. But I could have sworn I talked about it, and I'm sitting here saying to myself, maybe I talked about it in a live stream, in which if I did, it's mixed up in the live stream archive somewhere, so it will be hard for me to try to retrieve that. But I was tagged in this story from one of my followers on Twitter about Paul Haggis. And it came from the Daily Beast, and the title reads, Hollywood's silence on Oscar winner Paul Haggis is deafening. They should have said, but also not surprising. Had I been the one to write it, that's what it would have said. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this individual is because he had a scandal that came upon him that involved violating a woman. And there was a whole settlement and all types of stuff like that, but they kept it so under wraps, you would think that it never happened. Now, when it came to Bill Cosby, they made sure to keep that in the forefront for the longest time, for as long as they possibly could. And of course, you know what Roman Polanski, what his situation was back in the day. For me, that's still an issue. But I have a feeling that with Paul Haggis, they were trying to almost do him the same way they did Roman Polanski. The only difference between him and Roman is that the person he violated was of age. Still not right, but with Roman Polanski, it looked way worse. But I'm going to go ahead now and read more into this story, because for some of you, this is your first time hearing about this, and this might be your first time hearing about who this guy is. More than a month after director Paul Haggis was found liable of violating a woman in his Soho loft in 2013, Hollywood has largely remained silent on the civil court ruling. In November, Haggis was found liable of sexually assaulting publicist Haley Breest in his luxury penthouse following a Manhattan film premiere a decade ago. Breest was awarded $10 million, including damages in the civil suit. Haggis is attempting to appeal the decision. The two-time Oscar winner's legacy now hangs in the balance. In November, after Haggis lost his civil case, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences said it's reviewing possible disciplinary action against Haggis. That review is still in progress, the Academy told the Daily Beast. Now I know who I think I got him confused with. I got him confused with that story I did on, what was his name? Brandon Fraser. And the situation that happened with him, that's who I got it mixed up with. The Academy is addressing this matter according to our standards of conduct and the due process requirements under California nonprofit corporation law. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences said in a cryptic statement sent to the Daily Beast. Now listen to this. They said the review is still in progress. Now we know if Paul Haggis was a black man, there would not be some in progress. It would be, you're out of here. We're going to snatch all your little trophies that you've gotten and you're gone, and we're going to put you on the bench. Now, it's interesting that Will Smith got a 10-year ban from attending the Oscar ceremony for slapping Chris Rock. But this guy did what he did over, what was it, 10 years ago? They're just now talking about it, and you can't tell me no one didn't know. They probably most likely did know, but they didn't want to hurt his career or hinder it. Remember, Operation Protect the White Boy in full effect. But he's still around. As far as we know, still getting work as well. But again, there's Roman Polanski, so we're not surprised by that. An Academy spokesperson declined to comment on the extent of any possible discipline or a rough timeline as to when decision could be reached. Haggis could be banned from the Academy for a period or have his membership revoked altogether. However, the Academy has only issued 5 expulsions in its 93-year history, and no member has ever been stripped of their Oscar. Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Roman Polanski, and cinematographer Adam Kimmel have all been expelled from the Academy for sex crimes. All 4 men were convicted or found guilty of sexual misconduct. Cosby, who was sentenced to several years in prison by a Pennsylvania court in 2018 for drugging and sexually assaulting a woman in his home in 2004, however, was freed on appeal in June 2021. And you can basically say all of that stuff, in my opinion, is alleged. If you look through all of their stories, were their stories really making any sense? On Monday, Weinstein, age 70, was convicted in Los Angeles of violating one woman, his second sexual assault trial, after a New York jury in 2020 found him guilty of violating an actress and publicist. Haggis' case, however, is different from Weinstein, Cosby, Polanski, and Kimmel's in that he was found liable of violations in civil court, not criminal court. It's unclear if the legal distinction will have any bearing, in contrast to how the Academy has treated criminal sexual misconduct in the past when it comes to Haggis. Oh, so now y'all want to compare apples to oranges? Four other women also came forward accusing Haggis of sexual misconduct after Brees filed her lawsuit. They either testified or had sworn depositions played in court during his civil trial. Haggis' lawyers, however, complained that three of the four Jane Doe's testimonies, which is captured via a recorded deposition that was played in court, was not held to the same evidentiary standard as live trial testimony. In the wake of the Me Too movement, the Academy established a standards of conduct which may help guide the board's pending decision on Haggis. The code of conduct dictates that members are expected to behave ethically by upholding the Academy's values of respect for human dignity, inclusion, and a supportive environment that fosters creativity. There is no place in the Academy for people who abuse their status, power, or influence in a manner that violates recognized standards of decency, the code states. Well, I find that very hard to believe, because if that was the case, there would be none of them there to talk about. So apparently they slithered their way in there somehow. And again, I hate when they give out these scripted little disclaimers, because they're a bunch of BS at the end of the day when you put it in hindsight. The Academy is categorically opposed to any form of abuse, harassment, or discrimination on the basis of gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, disability, age, religion, or nationality. While the Academy continues to mull what action, if any, it will take against Haggis, it should be noted that Will Smith was banned for 10 years from attending the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, while Godfather Part 2 actor Carmine Caridi became the first actor to be banned back in 2004 when he was caught sharing screeners of movies that were later bootlegged. Basically, they're saying if they can get those two on what they did, and that's small compared to what he did, why is there a process that has to be done to ban him? Is basically what they're saying, which I would agree with. At trial, the Canadian screenwriter suggested he'd been blacklisted by Hollywood, bemoaning how job offers had dried up after his allegations against him surfaced. He added that lawyer fees had nearly bankrupted him. Haggis' last major film was producing and directing the 2018 documentary 5B alongside cinematographer Dan Krause. The film, which delved into the 1980s AIDS epidemic in San Francisco, premiered at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival. Cannes later removed Haggis' name from the press materials for the documentary 5B, which the filmmaker made after the sexual assault allegations involving Brees became public. The film, which received widespread praise, still boasts a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. No celebrities in Haggis' immediate orbit have publicly disavowed him as of yet. I'm not surprised by that. After all, didn't Roman Polanski get a standing ovation when he won his Oscar? It's unclear whether power couple Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas, who were in attendance of the Side Effects screening alongside Haggis hours before the alleged sexual assault of Brees occurred, will continue to support the screenwriter. During Haggis' testimony, he described Zeta-Jones as a close friend. Ben Stiller and Susan Sarandon, who co-chair Haggis' Artists for Peace charity, which he resigned from in 2018 amid the sexual misconduct allegations, have equally been mum. Actress Leah Remini, who testified in defense of Haggis at his trial, has failed to say anything about her friend's defeat in his civil violation trial. And I'm glad they're bringing all of this up, because this is the part where he has all these friends in high places and spaces, but they're being very quiet about this. Like, why aren't you saying anything if this is your so-called friend or, person that you've worked with? I don't know about y'all, but if you have a friend so-called and they've been doing something like this, you have to say something, because the fact that you're not saying anything almost makes it seem like you are okay with what he did. Haggis, a former celebrity Scientologist, argued at trial that the Church of Scientology has surreptitiously manufactured the case against him as part of a long-held vendetta over the Canadian filmmaker's public defection from the controversial religion in 2019. Remini, a former Scientologist and fierce critic of the religion, described Haggis as a caring, warm, and funny person who cares deeply about the underdog. She framed Haggis as a victim of Scientology in the sexual assault case. Remini also testified that the sexual assault allegations leveled at him by 5 separate women had no bearing on her opinion of Haggis. The Daily Beast has reached out to Remini for comment. So much for women being behind women. See how she said that this is my friend and everything like that. There's just no way he could have did this. A lot of people love to say that about their friends and saying their friends will be incapable of doing stuff like that. But don't be so quick to jump the gun. Some of y'all have trash friends. Let's just be real and honest with ourselves here. Mike Render, a former Scientology spokesperson and co-host of Remini's Fair Game podcast, also testified in defense of Haggis at trial, labeling him as one of the top 3 enemies of the church. Brees and her attorneys repeatedly denied any connection to the Church of Scientology throughout Haggis' trial. Church officials told the Daily Beast it was not surprised that the jury did not believe Haggis. None of this surprised us because we know his character and know firsthand that he's a liar because he blatantly lied about us. In other words, again, we told you so, the Church of Scientology said in a statement. So now the Church of Scientology is even pushing back against this guy. It is not the church's concern what Hollywood does with Haggis. The church said that is up to Hollywood and whether it wants to be associated with someone who a jury unanimously concluded violated a young woman, regardless of how Hollywood treats Haggis going forward. We know we were right about him the whole time. From the very beginning, we said Haggis is a self-centered fabulous who scripts his made-up version of reality while hiding his evil deeds. If anything, the repercussions in Haggis' hometown of London, Ontario, Canada, 2,400 miles northeast of Los Angeles, have been much swifter. Since Haggis was found liable of violation, the Southern Ontario city of 422,000 has embarked on a campaign to distance itself from the embattled screenwriter, quietly erasing him from monuments and education funds in his name. On December 13th, London's 14 city councillors unanimously voted to rename Paul Haggis Park. We continue to put words into action and not honor former Londoners who are found guilty of sexual assault, Councillor Elizabeth Pelosa, the architect of the civic motion, wrote on Twitter after the motion passed. Pelosa, who represents London's 12th ward, lived blocks away from the public space and often visits with her 3 children. She described Haggis' alleged actions as horrible and disgusting. When you think about naming stuff after people, that's what you're raising as an example, and you're extolling that person and essentially immortalizing them. The sign bearing Haggis' name was removed from the recreation site on December 14th. The city website also scrubbed any mentions of the Haggis Park. It's unclear what the park, which sits at 2875 Bateman Trail in the city's south end, will officially be renamed. London bestowed Haggis the honor in 2011. Pelosa City cited London's adoption of the United Nations Safe Cities Initiative Action Plan, which highlights the issue of violence against women and girls in public spaces, as one of the core reasons she sought to remove Haggis' name from the park. Haggis' recent civil verdict goes against what the policy represents and what I envision London being, Pelosa said. Since allegations first surfaced against Haggis in 2017 at the outset of the Me Too movement, the small Canadian city was initially torn on how to respond. The prospective name changes caps a more than 4-year effort by the city and community members to rename the park in Haggis' name. The civic initiative was re-energized in June when Haggis was arrested while attending a film festival in Italy on separate sexual assault allegations. An Italian judge ultimately dismissed the case. Haggis also denied those allegations. While Haggis' name might not ring a bell for many Londoners, he bolted to Hollywood more than 50 years ago. Annalise Trudell of London's women's shelter Anova said the name change is especially important for past victims of sexual violence. In 2006, the college awarded Haggis an honorary diploma and announced a scholarship in his name. The scholarship, in partnership with local school district, was intended for prospective arts program students. All right, I'm actually going to stop reading right there because it's way more into this article. But I think by now you pretty much get the gist of it. That it says, why is Hollywood being so quiet about what's going on with them? And that's a good question. But like I said, we pretty much get the gist of why they're being quiet. It's pretty obvious. they don't want to put any type of damper on this man's career, but it seems to me like they're already trying to snatch things slowly but surely away from him. And hey, it is what it is. But I thought it was interesting about them mentioning Will Smith in there, considering, like they said, if Will Smith can get a 10-year ban for what he did, then what's to stop them from banning him? And it looks like they're about to head in that direction, but we don't know, because in the first couple of sentences of the article where it says they're still in the reviewing process. Come on now. It's been over a month, and it's probably been even longer since this has been exposed. So the fact that this man was still able to go to these events, even with all the stuff out there in the public sphere, because it's not like he just started getting quote unquote blackballed. This has been going on for a while. They mentioned about him being arrested back in like 2018 for these allegations and these charges. So they knew what this guy was up to and what he was doing, but they just chose to stay silent. And then, of course, the whole thing with Bill Cosby, they were probably sitting back in their chair saying, whew, a sigh of relief. I can breathe a little bit, because now the heat has been taken off of him. But now the wagons has circled its way back on him. So now we'll see what the Academy is going to do, which if they don't do anything, I won't be surprised.